Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the iDive. This podcast bridges the knowledge gap between students and industry professionals by engaging in some meaningful conversations. Our questions come from students seeking to learn more about how one would go about making the transition post-grad as seamless as possible. Today, we have Alex Goel, a 2015 alumni from the Information Systems and Design concentration, who has also taken some culture and technology courses at the iSchool. With experiences from Ontario Public Service, Ontario Health, formerly Cancer Care Ontario, and PuraJuniper, he brings a wealth of knowledge to share with the team. We thank you kindly for your support and time in helping our student community learn from your stories and reflections. Episode 4 of the iDive podcast features Alex's experience, both in culture and technology and information systems and design. Give a warm welcome to Alex. Can you please give us a brief intro about yourself and your story of how you got into your field?
Thanks, Roshni. I really appreciate the introduction and the opportunity to be here. I guess I started actually in an arts degree at U of T, and I made my way into the iSchool because I was very interested in learning how to manage different IT systems. Not as much on the technical development side, but also more on the architecture side and applying some of those communication skills. And I learned that in the IT or in the iSchool, and then I managed to apply those in my career in the OPS, the Ontario Public Service, the OPS, and Ontario Health. And now I've started my own little business called PuraJuniper, and we do healthcare IT consulting.
Awesome. What's it like starting your own business? Could you tell me what kind of work you're responsible for in your current role?
So I'm responsible for a lot of different stuff, being the founder of the business, I guess. I have to do a lot of the accounting. I have to do a lot of the day-to-day operations management. I also do a lot of finding for new business. I have to find clients, talk to them, do the advertising promotion stuff as well. So that's all really, really interesting and a really big learning experience for me, because what I was doing before that in my roles in the public service was much more focused on day-to-day operations and getting things done and doing project management and applying technical theories and frameworks and being able to deploy different technical solutions in these different workplace environments that I was in. So yeah, now I do a lot less of the technical work and more of the management stuff.
Sounds like you're coming from a really interdisciplinary background. I would love to learn how you use those background skills to leverage them into problem solving in your new role right now.
I would say the biggest thing for me is being able to clearly communicate an idea, and kind of, I think the iSchool fits really nicely into this, where the iSchool trains its graduates to communicate between very technical people and the business owners. And the business owners might be, if you're in a consulting role like I am now, your clients, or previously when I was in public service, they were actually our colleagues who were actually managing the day-to-day the doing of stuff. Like, we were working with people who were printing security guard licenses, for example, and those people who are actually doing the normal tasks that happen in those types of business activities versus the IT systems that they use every day to put data in, the websites that they're accessing, things like that are getting managed by the IT teams. Being that role that go between those two different groups, I think that's what the iSchool really set me up for. And I think that having an interdisciplinary background actually helped me be more ready for that type of role.
Interesting. I like how you're coming at it from that angle of problem solving, those basic soft skills, and how you're leveraging those into this new line of work with the entrepreneurial lens.
Yeah, absolutely. Those soft skills were really important for that.
How would you describe opportunities for growth in your career? I guess what led to this entrepreneurial journey, and would you say now it's more horizontal or vertical, Or is there something that you know now about this aspect of your career that you wish you knew earlier?
For me, it's been pretty vertical. So I've moved from a business analyst to a regular analyst to a senior analyst to uh, principal consultant of my own little company. And I think a lot of the stuff I've learned along the way has helped me figure out what the role is different, or what the role means, and why I kind of want to do what I do. I think I need to explain that a little bit better. But really what it is I learned how to problem solve by taking on these smaller positions and having these really deep dives into very little pockets of what I was supposed to do every day. So for example, I'd have to build requirements, and that was my role, was writing requirements documents. That was my first job. And now that has expanded where I'm not only reviewing these requirements now, but I'm helping design the software, develop the software, the accounting, the project management, all of these different things. Whereas before, when I started my career, I was just writing the requirements. So it's been absolutely a vertical journey of taking on increased responsibility for me.
I love how you're reflecting back to those like monumental steps from the early stages and how those are kind of coming back and kind of you're building on them. It's almost like a domino chain reaction going forward into where you are today. So awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I would like to know, is there an aspect of your career, perhaps presenting your projects or learning to code, that people may not think is an integral part of it?
So I've heard this question a lot from different people I've talked to at the iSchool, but a lot of people have asked if they need to learn to code, or if they need that really, really, really strong technical chops in order to be successful in a career that the iSchool is setting you up for, like a business analyst or a project manager in that type of role, or even like if you're in something like the knowledge management stream, a database administrator. I don't think in all of those roles that you need those super strong technical chops, unless you want to develop and become a developer and build software yourself. For me, it's more just about tinkering and playing around and understanding where developers are coming from and knowing how to articulate requirements properly and do more of that consulting and business work. So I don't think that you necessarily need to go that way, and it's not so important to have that technical prowess if that's not what you want to do, right? There's different ways to build a career, especially in a information systems field.
All right, well, that kind of changed right over to my next question. What are some fundamental skills or softwares that you must know in your field?
Oh, I have some pretty strong opinions about this question. I think it really depends on what kind of field you're going into. What I needed to know when I was in the Ontario Public Service was very different than what I needed to know when I was in Ontario Health. And there was a lot of overlap, of course. But I think what's more important is learning how to think critically about what you need to bring to that job and how to quickly learn and find information. And the iSchool has its roots in library sciences, and being able to quickly find information is something that I think we as faculty of information grads are taught to do. We're taught to look up information, search for it really quickly, and then synthesize and turn it into knowledge. And I found for me that's a more important skill set than saying like, you must know how to use Visio. Visio is going to be your make or break skill. So knowing how to type well, knowing how to communicate well, knowing how to make really good presentations. Those are all really important skills too. And if you know how to manage a database, know how to write requirements, those are things that you can bring to the table that will help you be desirable to employers who are looking for really good people to help them design software, help them build requirements, engage clients, consult, that kind of work.
Awesome. Now, I know you're talking about the skills you're bringing to the employers. Having gone through your own journey from the start now to probably being a hiring manager, could you reflect on your own interview experiences and what questions should students expect in an interview, and how should they approach an interview following their iSchool degree?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question because this can really change depending on who the hiring manager is and also what company you're applying to or organization, especially if you're going for something in a nonprofit or a government sector. The types of questions and the structures of the interviews will be really different. I think for me, one of the things that I want to know from a candidate is why they want the job and what they're going to bring to the job every day. Working in a field like healthcare, there's a lot of impact to be made. And if you're just in it for your paycheck, your 9 to 5, that's great. That's fine. You'll probably do a good job. You'll probably be good. But that candidate who wants to bring something extra to the table or has that excitement about the work will probably bring a lot more motivation. So I would apply for jobs that you feel good about getting up for in the morning. When you wake up, you actually want to do your work. And I would say that your hiring managers, if they're good hiring managers, will probably pick up on that in your interviews.
So now imagine you pass the interview phase, you're in the job. How do you work with someone who doesn't agree with your ideas?
This is another really good question. And I think, again, it goes back to those soft skills that we talked about earlier. Being able to really clearly articulate what you're thinking and mocking up something. Especially if you're in the UX stream in the iSchool, like being able to mock up what you're visualizing in your head and putting that down onto a nice diagram for someone can be really valuable, and being able to explain it to them and articulate your point of view. And to be honest, when you're entering the workforce, you're not going to be the biggest or loudest voice in the room. You're going to have to allow other people who are in more senior roles and might know something that you don't know to take command. But that also doesn't mean that you should be silent. So if you have an idea or you want to say something, then you have to find a good opportunity or find a really good way to say it. So having tact and being polite are really valuable skills. But also just being able to very, very clearly say what you're thinking in the right context, I think is the way to get around someone who is maybe blocking you or someone who thinks that your particular point of view is incorrect.
Awesome. I do want to kind of probe a little deeper on this question. Is there an example or a reflection you could tell me about where you spoke up an idea in a room and it wasn't agreed upon?
Yeah, fairly recently, actually, I was working on a product, and one of my colleagues just was picking at one of my requirements that we had that I had drafted, and they were saying that this aspect of the design was not really working or wasn't going to work in the real world. And so I decided to mock up the design in some diagrams and show the workflow of how it would work. And I very politely showed them the work that I had done and explained my thinking behind it. And I got them to kind of flip over to my point of view. And I think that, again, like if you can show your colleagues, and especially if you're, it's really important not to embarrass anybody. So if you can do it not publicly, do it privately and show them, hey, this is what I was thinking, this is what I was talking about in that particular meeting. What do you think of this? Do you think we can take this back to the group? It's a much better way to show rather than tell people what you're thinking about and why you're doing what you're doing, and why you're reaching certain decisions that other people might not be.
Awesome. You're kind of like drawing in on those core elements of design thinking and empathy that I've learned throughout the MI degree in my first semester there as a UX student. So I really like how you're talking more about building those office relationships and building rapport with your colleagues and presenting your work.
Yeah, and building up the empathy is actually really key, not just from a design thinking perspective, but also from like client management perspective, if you're in that type of role too.
Awesome. So just kind of learning more about client management or your line of work, what are some recommended books, podcasts, anything that's kind of helped you along the way to get to where you are today?
So for me, I found a lot of the books that I've read might not be as useful for the general audience here. But because I did a Bachelor of Arts, I read a lot of philosophy books, such as Frantz Fanon, and I read who wrote this book called Black Skin, White Masks, and then we read Foucault and books like that, a lot of French philosophers, and they teach you how to think about people. A lot of psychology is really helpful too, for that type of stuff, sociology as well, and just learning how to interact with your colleagues, interact with your clients, interact with yourself, to be honest, and reflect on your experiences and build and grow upon them. These are all really important things to take away. So I would say, I don't think reading a book that I read is going to make you any better at what you do. Read a book that makes you happy, and maybe read a Frantz Fanon book, because they're really good, but they're very heavy philosophy books.
I absolutely love that. I don't think you can ever undervalue the power of emotional intelligence and reflection, especially when it comes to learning psychology or sociology or that type of literature, because it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about those soft skills. Unless you really know yourself, how are you supposed to know your colleagues and build that rapport connection in the office? Now, just kind of shifting gears, could you tell me a little bit more about who you're working with on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So now that I'm doing more of like the business side of stuff, I'm working very, very closely with my clients, and I'm talking with them daily. So that's the main group that I interact with. I also have a number of people who work for and with me, and those people I also talk to every day, but a little bit less. From my role, it's really important to understand what my clients want and why they're doing stuff. Their motivations are really, really key for me. And that helps inform and me take back to my team and my colleagues who are working with me on actually making the deliverables for those clients. So yeah, I spend a lot of time with my clients, and then I spend a good amount of time with the people I work with. And quite frankly, with COVID, I spent a lot of time by myself, just getting the deliverables done, which I really like because it's a nice break from everything.
Nice. I like how you kind of shared that last piece to be very timely and relevant to what we're all going through right now. But I've learned that working with technology is known to be a very highly collaborative role, and I'm sure with your business side and the clients and the colleagues. I know you mentioned earlier being polite is a nice way to build rapport with colleagues, but is there any other tips you'd like to build upon to build that rapport and connection, especially during COVID?
Yeah, Rushing, you alluded earlier to the design thinking empathy. And I think that is actually a key skill that you can bring to pretty much any role in a technical capacity, whether you're a software developer, whether you're a QA tester, whether you're a UX designer or BA. Having that understanding of motivation and why you're doing something, and what, if you're building an app, what is your app supposed to do or deliver to the client, what your end user is going to use it for, and understanding that is key. And that's the real value that you can bring to a team. besides your regular deliverable, you know, besides delivering good code or delivering good requirements or delivering good mockups, you can bring an understanding of what your application is going to build. And that's, I mean, I have a really strong bias for that because I don't get motivated to work unless I know what the big goal is at the end, what we're building towards. And quite frankly, not everybody's like that, but that's how I am. And that's why I like to see, and that's how I work. So I work wanting to know why my client wants to do something or why our business is aiming to do a particular goal and what that's going to be. And so that's what I like to bring to a team, is that big picture thinking.
I feel like time and time again, I hear from a lot of alumni that impact element is crucial, and just knowing that how's your work and actually have impact in the industry and impact with the people you're working with. So really want to commend you for that. That is such an awesome foresight to have when working towards your projects. Kind of speaking of that impact element, how do you stay up to date on new trends in the industry, and how do you know that you're making impact towards the future we're living in?
So I think I'm in a little bit of a special case here because healthcare is an industry that still relies on the fax machine daily. And there was a lot of technology that I had to learn about when I started working in healthcare and working in the government in general, that I did not learn about in the iSchool, and that I did not learn about from books or stuff like that because they were so old and I had to look them up on Wikipedia in the office and find out that they were from like before I was born. And they were still in use and getting implemented as new technology. So there's lots of examples like that. And so for me, staying up to date is kind of a funny question because I feel like my role is really bringing stuff up to date than it is staying up to date. But listening to podcasts is really good. Reading articles, you know, people in my network on LinkedIn post all kinds of stuff. And it's good. It's a good way to just see what other people are doing. Attending meetings, attending conferences, especially if you can get funding to go to them, is a really, really good way to stay on that bleeding edge of stuff. That's usually where I get those takeaways of what is the latest and greatest. Like I said, healthcare is a really special case. And if you want to find a field where you can have a high impact in the technology role, healthcare is definitely up there.
That's awesome. I love how you shared that almost staying up to date for industry trends. It's like going back in the books and looking at what was up to date years ago, and then how can you bring folks up to speed?
I would say that that's really specific to healthcare. And if you're in, like, if you're working for a FANG company like a Facebook, Amazon, Google, Netflix, whatever, you're going to be in a very different position than I am.
Okay. Well, maybe just kind of alluding to your healthcare experiences or where you are today, what are some of your favorite projects? And could you describe some key skills you found useful for them?
So most of my favorite projects are around building better health data collection tools. I mean, that's what I do every day, and did in Ontario Health, and now do as a business. Yeah, all of my favorite projects have been around trying to get better healthcare data because I see it as such a big gap in how we deliver care now. It's that we just don't know enough about the type of care we're delivering. And like my parents are getting older, my grandparents are getting older, friends and family are getting older, and I want them all to get the best healthcare that we can. It's such a big issue. It's such a big point of spending in our government. Yeah, I'm really passionate about that side of things and wanting to understand how we can make the system better through technology.
Awesome. I can feel the empathy element to that. And I feel like many members of our audience can also resonate to that because my parents are also getting older, and I would love to see healthcare data be tracked in a much better approach on the platform. So shout out to you, man. Also, side note, you should look into Blue Dot. I've heard that's a really good type of healthcare agency.
Yeah, they're doing some really interesting stuff. Yeah.
So what is one myth about your industry that you'd like to debunk?
Okay. I'm going to go back to that being on the bleeding edge question. Sometimes you don't need to be on the bleeding edge, and staying up to date is not being, like you said, Roshni, up to date. It's more about understanding what happened before. I think one of the really good examples is COBOL, which is this financial programming language from the 60s. And there were a lot of systems built on top of COBOL, and they had to pull programmers out of retirement to build systems or interface systems that were running on COBOL in 2020. And this language is from the 60s. So they had to pull people out of retirement to build systems and interfaces in 2020 because they had never done upgrades or kept it up to date. So sometimes the best thing you can do is learn about what came before you and learn about what people are using now. And even like in banking, there's a lot of legacy technology, and understanding this legacy element can be really valuable. Again, depends on your field. If you're working at a really new, move fast and break things startup, probably not as valuable. But if you're working in a field like healthcare or finance, learning what the legacy technologies are is a pretty good skill.
Awesome. Just kind of speaking about retirement, I don't think you're that old, but where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, okay, I'm definitely not retiring in 5 years. Not even close. But I've done such a big pivot from being a government employee to starting a business for me. I'm still kind of figuring out what this year looks like and what next year looks like. So I'm not sure what the next 5 years is going to look like for me. I think right now what I want to do is I want to grow the business and find new clients and hire more people. Right now I have a bunch of people I'm working with part-time, and I'd like to either move some of them to full-time or have full-time people who are working for me and with me. And I would really like to build up my own portfolio like that. And if that doesn't work out, then I'll probably have to get a real job. So we'll see.
I mean, all the power and courage to you for entrepreneurship. I think that is very courageous, and especially with the impact you've talked about here today, I think everything you're doing is really important. So thank you for that. Who are 3 people who have been the most inspirational to you in your journey?
So I think for me, it's really hard to pick 3 people, but I've had a few different mentors along the way. Pretty much one at each job or at each phase in my career. I had the senior BA Nazrin who taught me how to write really good requirements, and I'm still in touch with her, and we still chat occasionally. But I feel bad just naming her and not any of my other colleagues from the OPS, because that was such a supportive team and so many great people. And then I had a really good project manager when I was in Ontario Health, Dave, and he really helped me out, and he taught me a lot about healthcare data and about the problems, and he made me understand why the problems existed and the history behind them, and understanding that aspect really motivated me to try to make more change. And then I have my mentor, Derek, who's been guiding me a lot on how to run a business, how to build a business, how to hire people, all these other questions that I have. And it's just nice to have these different people in all of these different phases of my career who I can talk to and who I can rely on to answer these kinds of questions for me. so it's always nice to build these connections with people and maintain those relationships and talk to people. And quite frankly, that's the side of networking I don't think people talk about enough, is actually making friends. And you should make some friends along the way, instead of just seeing these people as offering value and advice in your life.
Yeah, I've heard that mentorship is like a two-way street, because in that relationship, just as you're learning and exchanging knowledge, they're learning so much from you too, because you're coming from this completely different mindset and perspective. So I also love that. Okay, so we're just about finishing up. I want you to imagine it's your first day at the iSchool. And if you could give yourself one piece of advice going back to when you started your journey, what would you say to the Alex back then?
I think the biggest thing was that I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I didn't know what career or path I was going to end up. I really did not know I was going to end up working in healthcare technology. That was not something I planned on or wanted to do. And I think the best advice is creating your own opportunities and seeking out connections and finding ways to advance yourself and grow are really important. So don't miss out on opportunities that you think you could have got. And even if you don't think you can kind of get that opportunity, apply for that job. See what happens. The worst that happens is you get told no in a lot of cases.
I love that saying, because it's like, even if you get told no, okay, so then there's another opportunity, or there's something else you can apply to, right? So it's just like, try if there's something out there. Okay, so now we're going to go on to a fun fire rapid session round, where we're just kind of closing off. I'm going to give you a few prompts. You could tell us the first few things that come to mind as I start this off. That'll be awesome. You ready?
I'm ready.
So learning is?
Turning information to knowledge and wisdom.
Innovation is?
Breaking old things.
What is something people often get wrong about you?
People always think I'm really old.
Side note, I did not think you were retiring in 5 years, but
just checking. You asked the question.
What is one piece of advice that's so awful you need to warn us against it?
Can I skip? Is that allowed?
Yeah. What is the one thing that you're really excited about?
I'm really excited about growing my company this year. And
awesome.
Can I pick a second one, since I skipped the last question?
Yeah.
Also, I'm very excited about having warmer weather.
I totally vibe and resonate with that, man. We need the summer to come real soon. What is one thing you're most grateful for?
I'm really grateful for my friends and family and mentors and people who support me in my life.
The heartstrings there. Definitely connect with that. Relationships are so valuable. What's your biggest pet peeve?
For me, it's missing a meal.
And if you could describe yourself in one word, what would it be?
Yes.
Awesome. Love a good yes, man. And what is a song you can't live without, the big banger to close it off with?
For me, it's going to be Desperado by Rihanna from her 2015 album Anti.
Nice. I like that text. Nice. Awesome. So, well, that wraps up our session here today. I wanted to thank you so much for your insights. I'm sure many students, including myself, will find real value in the knowledge you shared here today. We're so grateful for your time, and who knows, maybe you'll be back here one day again too. Thanks so much, Alex, and take care.
Thank you. It's great chatting with you.